At some point while building your company, you're going to want to go out and form a business with your estate. There are several reasons why you would want to do this. You want to separate your business and your personal assets. You want to make sure that your business owns all of the IP, intellectual property, that's been generated for the business. And you want to make sure that you can organize the various rights and responsibilities of the people that are involved in helping you build your business. Separation of assets is incredibly important as you build your company, and this is true for any company. The default rule is that when you form a company, the company and yourself are treated as the same. So any money that you make is treated as income, which can be good. But if something bad happens and the business gets sued or the business has some sort of obligations, that liability extends to you as an individual person. Creating a business allows you to file for a limited liability company. So that could be an LLC, that could be an S Corp, that can be a C Corp. This limited liability allows you to keep your personal assets separate from your business assets so that if something happens to the business, your personal assets aren't at risk. Creating a business entity also allows you to take control over intellectual property more simply. So the default is that when someone creates something, whether it's an invention, a logo, any form of intellectual property, that property belongs to the individual who created it. This is not ideal if you're trying to build a business. Most tech companies are composed of a bunch of intellectual property creations, such as code or logos or business plans. You want all of that stuff to belong to the business. And the best way to do that is to form a business entity that the various creators can turn the IP over to. So by creating the business early on, you can enter into agreements with people that say that any intellectual property they create for the business belongs to the business and not for them. This is a big deal. When you hear about founders suing their former companies, like a departed early co-founder, often the reason for the lawsuit or the basis for the lawsuit is on IP. I mean, they might be suing because they had a fallout, but usually where they actually sue is for some sort of IP issue. The third reason to create a business entity is to organize the rights and responsibilities of all of the people that are contributing to the development of the business. So by having a company, you have a central contracting organization that can do things like employ people. It can take ownership of intellectual property. On the ownership side, you can split the business up into shares or into ownership pieces that make it a lot easier to organize stakeholders like investors. So by having shares, for example, you can assign ownership and control of the company to people who you want to have ownership and control over the company of. It's harder to manage all of these agreements and all of these stakeholders through informal handshakes, and those also aren't enforceable. So if you have an informal agreement with somebody and they decide to run away with their intellectual property, it's very hard to sue them for not keeping up to that agreement. So forming a company makes it a lot easier to just keep everybody organized and in place. So which entity should you choose? An LLC, an S Corp, or a C Corp? There are no right answers. It depends on the type of business you're creating. Each of these entity types has benefits and costs associated with them, and they can be legal issues and they can be tax issues. So you should consult an accountant or a lawyer when you're going to make this choice. One important thing to keep in mind, though, is that you should find lawyers and accountants who understand the type of business that you're building. If you want to build a tech business, you should find lawyers and accountants who understand the tech industry because they've done this work for other types of tech companies. One thing you might run into as an entrepreneur is that service providers will often tell you to do things in the way that they are most familiar with them. So a real estate lawyer will tell you to form your business like a real estate company because that's what they know. So find people who are building the type of business that you want to build and then ask them who they use as their lawyer, or find lawyers who are specialized in that type of business. It's very easy to find accountants and lawyers who really understand tech. There are two really important caveats around your the type of business that you choose. The first is that you can convert your business. So even if you start with one entity type now, you can convert that entity to another type later. One challenge, though, is that it can be expensive, especially if some of the parties don't agree to that change. So let's say you create an LLC and you have several people who are owners of the LLC and you want to convert to a C Corp. You have to get all of those owners to agree to that conversion. So it is doable, but it can be costly. So again, it's up to you to find lawyers and accountants who will help you make the right choice. And if you want to do a conversion later, that's on the table. It's not like it's completely irreversible, assuming you can get agreement from all owners and stakeholders. Another important caveat is that if you're raising venture capital money, you will eventually need to be a Delaware C Corp. VCs will only invest in Delaware C Corps. This is for various reasons. Delaware C Corps give them the flexibility that they need in owning stock. They understand Delaware corporate law, and most other companies are Delaware C Corps. So it makes it a lot easier to give equity to employees. It makes it a lot easier to manage other investors. It makes it a lot easier to understand what outcomes are going to be in litigation. So at some point, if you're going to be a venture capital backed business, you're going to have to make the conversion to being a C Corp. It's something to be aware of. You don't have to start as a C Corp. Again, you can make that conversion depending on how much you want to pay for incorporation fees early on.